Hello and welcome to another lesson on Microsoft Excel basics. In the previous lesson, we made to understand what cell reference is and what relative cell reference is all about. Today, we are going to look at absolute cell reference. Before then, let's refresh our memory on what a relative cell reference is so that we'll be able to appreciate what an absolute cell reference is. What is a relative cell reference? A relative cell reference is when the reference changes according to the position of the cell it is copied to. If you want to repeat the same calculation across several columns or rows, you need to use relative cell references. So, in our previous work here, if you look at this is a relative cell reference because when we copy it down here, you can see that it changed from what is in this cell to this other cell here. Now let's go to our absolute cell reference here. An absolute cell reference is a reference that does not change when you copy it across rows and columns. It is useful when using a value that is constant. If you want to multiply or use a value that is constant that you want it to remain unchanged as you copy across the cells, it is advisable to use an absolute cell reference. An absolute cell reference is represented with a dollar sign. Now let's take this example and see what an absolute cell reference is all about. But before that, let's remind ourselves the cell address or the cell reference does not change when the formula is copied. Both the rows and the columns are locked with the dollar sign. So we want to calculate the tithe for each of these church members. And as we all know, tithe is always 10%. So we want to calculate 10% of their salary here and return the answer here. Now, we want it in such a way that this one for June, the salary for June will be multiplying this 10%. The salary for Juan will still be multiplying this 10%. The salary for Blessing will still multiply this 10%. Salary for Fidelis, Alice, and Cecilia will multiply this 10%. Now let's look at it. Let's pretend that we want to make a relative cell reference. First of all, we choose this one here and multiply. Press your Shift plus 8 to multiply, and then click this one also. When you press enter, the first cell here will work it correctly. But when we take our cursor to this point where we have a shaded box and double click it, you see that we have 0 there, which shows an error because the 10% of 200,000 is not 0. So let's look at what is wrong. You can see that this one has shifted while this other side is not locked. It's correct, but you can see that the G11 has shifted from where it's supposed to multiply to the next cell. If we move it to this one, we can see that it has shifted from that G10 to G12. This is a relative cell reference, but in this case, this particular column G, we do not need a relative cell reference. What we need is an absolute cell reference. So let's delete this and start all over. So if we want to remember to always start with an equal to sign, I'll click this cell here and then press Shift plus 8 to initiate the multiplication sign, and then also click this one here, this cell here containing the 10%. After that, I press my F4. F4 helps you to lock your cell, helps to create an absolute cell reference. If you look at this G10 here, you see that there's a dollar sign before the G, which locks the column, and there's a dollar sign before the 10, which locks the row. Now press enter. You can see that it has calculated it for us. Now, if I want to copy it across the other cell, I just look at that shaded box, double click it, and it's going to calculate it. Now let's look at what the formula looks like. You can see, let's go over to the next one. You can see while this one is shifting, this other one we use relative cell reference, while for this one we use absolute cell reference. You can see when we move over to this one is shifting, but it remains unchanged. It's always multiplying by this 10%. I hope that's understood. Now let's look at the next one here. Let's assume certain people were given some products to sell and they are promised 20% commission. So how do they calculate their commission? Firstly, you must understand that for you to calculate this thing here in terms of percentage, you should always include percentage to the value here. Even this will always include percentage so that Microsoft Excel will understand that it's a percentage. Otherwise, if we're merely multiplying, this would have been 0.1, this would have been 0.2. Always take note of that. Always keep it in the percentage so that Microsoft Excel will understand it. Over to this. This is an affiliate marketing, and these people have made certain sales. James has made 500,000 naira. Amp has made 26,000 naira. Cecilia 45, Faith 26, and so on and so forth. So how do we calculate it? Now we want it in such a way that each of these value here will be multiplying by 20%, while this one will be shifting relatively. We do not want this one to shift because it is constant. Remember, an absolute cell reference is needed when a value is constant. The value in this case, which is a commission of 20%, is constant for every affiliate marketer here. So we just type equal to sign, select the first cell, press shift plus 8, and also click the cell containing that 20%. After that, to make it an absolute cell reference, we have to press our F4. Once you press your F4, click enter. Now you can see our values here. Now, since I've calculated for the first one, I do not need to calculate for the next one. Just keep my cursor here on the shaded box at the bottom here, double click it, and you can see that it has calculated it. Now let's look at our formula here. The first one, you can see this is multiplying by this. Let's look at the second one. This is multiplying by this. In case you want to edit or look at your formula, always press the F2 or double click the cell that you want to see the formula. So that's it for today. See you in another episode.